Project, United Nations Development Program, representatives of international networks, judiciary, law enforcement, NGOs, the media, our friends from indigenous communities, persons with disabilities, and participants from countries impacted by Hurricane Beryl. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, afternoon, and evening to you all. My name is Adrian Alexander, and I'm the Advocacy and Movement Building Country Manager for Free the Slaves based in Trinidad and Tobago. It's my pleasure to be your host for today's event and to welcome you to the launch of the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons. The coalition is being launched on a day that falls between the 10th anniversary of World Day Against Trafficking in Persons and the 190th anniversary, the coming into effect of the Slavery Abolition Act across the British Empire. A sobering reminder to us all that the trade in human beings and the atrocities of slavery continue to this day. Research in our collective history shows that it takes a network solution to address a network problem. That's why we're so excited to launch this cross-border, cross-sector coalition to signal the end to a siloed response to human trafficking in our region. Without further ado, I invite Mr. Bukeni Waruzi to deliver his opening remarks. Bukeni?
Thank you so much, Adrian. I'm sorry I had a few tickets here with the network. I am good morning, good evening, wherever you're following us. I am Bukeni Waruzi, and I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to meet with you this morning. First of all, I want to say thank you so very much to the Caribbean colleagues for putting together this wonderful event. Modern slavery and trafficking in person is a global phenomenon, but also it happens mostly at domestic level, locally in our own community. And coming together to form this network, it is really an indication of how determined we are to really put our efforts to end this scourge. As I always say, no country is immune from trafficking, whether it is from the global north to the global south. We are all in this together. And at the same time, no single agency or government or institution or NGO can end it alone. We'll need to come together. So there are so many reasons why we have to coalesce, we have to network, we have to partner, we have to come together to put our effort and unite for this cause. I know some of the countries are very well rated in, when it comes to the TIP report. Some of them are not well rated, but that is just statistics. But this issue affects people. It affects our girls and boys, our moms and dads, our sisters and brothers. So coming together signals that we are more than ever united, and this is the way to go. It's the way to go because traffickers are so smart, and they have so many channels, and we can only really fight against them if we put all our brains, our effort, our resources together. So I want to say really congratulations to the team, of course, led by Sandra and Adrian, and also our colleague Daihan, and really coming together from United Nations agency, local organizations, survivor networks, and Free the Slaves, of course. The idea of forming a network won't be a new idea at Free the Slaves. It is part of our core strategy of building a movement. And that movement starts in the communities where modern slavery occurs, where trafficking in person occurs. So it is a great day that at least a child is born, and a child has, we will grow, and the child will mature. And that child has a family, has a community. And that is what is the coalition, the Caribbean Coalition, against trafficking in persons. So I'm not going to take too long, as I was given a small task of kind of opening up these wonderful initiatives as we start the discussions here. And really, one more thing that I wanted just to kind of to highlight here, the beauty of the coalition itself is that it brings everybody, government, United Nations agency, civil society organizations, survivors. But really, we will need survivors to lead as we on the solutions. So we are happy that we have the community of survivor joining in this initiative, and we are really very grateful for all of us, for all of you, for really taking the time and really the effort, the commitment that you're going to have here. There are a few initiatives that I think Adrian will probably outline a little bit in terms of the objectives, the goal for this coalition. And really, the responses to modern slavery can come everywhere. But we have to come together to put those ideas on the tables, learn from each other, but also lead the movement in the region. And here we have the best brains to do that. As I say, from government to survivor through civil society organizations and businesses alike, everybody really, and the academics. So it is something that really will, we have high hopes in what this coalition can accomplish. It is something really that we believe it will help really move the mountains if we can. But also no pressure at all. That's not my intention to put pressure on the coalition, but really to elevate the space that we have hope in, really having the solutions that we dearly really need. So I want to say really thank you for this initiative, and really congratulations to you and all of us, that came with this idea, which is a very tremendous, very strategic and very smart idea, to come together and work together in a more strategic way and really commit together in a way that will help us make an impact in the region, and also and support initiatives that can contribute to addressing human trafficking in the Caribbean region. With that, I say really thank you, and I yield back to you, Adrian.
Thank you very much, Bukeni. Next, we have Mr. Tim Howe, Senior Regional Specialist on Migration Protection and Assistance for the IOM. Tim, over to you.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. I think it was both very difficult and very easy to follow Bukeni. It's difficult because what else can be said, but I think it's very easy because thank you so much, Bukeni, because I think you set the tone very nicely. So anything I'm going to say now cannot possibly ruin what you just created there. So no, thank you so much on behalf of the International Organization for Migration for the invitation today. We're actually really humbled that you invited us to speak today together with other partners. And when I sent a bilateral congratulatory message to Adrian yesterday, he immediately responded to me in a very humble way and pointed to everybody in the region and to the efforts done by everybody, including the great team of Free the Slave, Sandra, Adrian. But I know there are many, so I won't point everybody out. But I think that is the right spirit. And I think this is why we're so happy to join the discussion today. We feel the creation of this coalition is extremely timely in various respects. And I remember I had the pleasure of joining the 2023 forum in Trinidad and Tobago, which was extremely vibrant, very dynamic. I learned so much, we learned so much, and the discussions were so interesting. And then I was told the last forum in Jamaica was even more vibrant and even more interesting. But I remember very well that in 2023, the idea of a coalition was floated because there were so many ideas in the room, and people kept on throwing in so many good ideas. that it seemed very logical to connect the dots. So it's great that you're here now, that we are here now today. The other reason I think why it is timely, and I'm just going to go quickly into some of the key trends that we are seeing from IOM to link a little bit perhaps to what you're going to talk about more today, and I know for the years and decades to come, is that we're seeing a couple of macro trends at global level. And as Bukeni said, trafficking is everywhere, and we need to ensure that counter-trafficking is also everywhere, right? What we are seeing, particularly from as IOM, when we look at the link to migration and displacement, we know that human mobility is increasing, which is not a bad thing at all. I mean, we need to be very clear on that. Migration has always been there, it will always be there, and it is a force for good. However, what we're of course concerned about is people leaving for the wrong reasons, people leaving against their will, and people leaving in an irregular way, including when there is no strong migration policy that can ensure that vulnerabilities are addressed. Because this is the link where we see counter trafficking, exploitation, abuse does not just appear out of the blue, but often traffickers prey on vulnerabilities. And this is why we're so concerned about certain trends in the migration sphere, and why we think we need to double, if not triple, our efforts against trafficking. There's also, of course, a key link to migration and what we should call really the climate crisis. I mean, you all know the early onset this year of the hurricane season is one out of many, many warning signals we keep on getting. We're estimating that already 300 million people live in communities extremely vulnerable to climate change. And what does this mean? When people are vulnerable, it means, again, that it's so much easier for traffickers to make a profit. They will be targeting people, so people need enhanced levels of protection. Now, the role of civil society in this, I think we cannot underestimate the role of civil society, much to the contrary. And anything that we see, and often as IOM, we say we've been working a long time on counter-trafficking with many partners. We've been assisting around 100,000 victims of trafficking over the past year. So we think we've seen a lot, but what we really see every day is the key role of grassroots organizations, of people really out there in communities. I talked about affected communities. So we need to start our efforts there. And that's what we're seeing. Bukeni very rightly said, sometimes we get a bit blinded by statistics and numbers and estimates. And that's the risk, because we know that at the end of the day, we are not even identifying most of the victims of trafficking that are out there. But if we want to do that, we need to connect the dots, and we need to work with civil society. We need to reach to the people to make everybody understand that everybody can identify a victim of trafficking. And then the second stage is everything that has to do with protection and referral services, where again, it's NGOs, right, that in reality are providing much of the service, much of the assistance that are really there to support. So again, we think connecting these dots in the Caribbean will be a force for good, will be extremely important. I'm just going to conclude, because I'm taking the hint also from Bukeni, that we try to be very short and concise. So let me just conclude by saying we've been working on counter-trafficking as IOM for more than 25 years. And at some point, and I think I reflected on that also in the forum in 2023, and I know Zeke, when he, from my IOM colleague from Trinidad and Tobago, who's also connected, when he participated in Jamaica this year, made also some reflections on that. At some point, we felt like we had to re-evaluate how we were working on counter-trafficking, because we were doing everything from prevention campaigns to protection to training prosecutors, anything under sun, and everything is important. But we sat down and we went through this exercise of saying, what has really worked for us as IOM? What is our added value at this? And I invite you to look at our homepage. You can look for IOM's theory of change, because we concluded that we need to stop doing everything, and we really need to refocus our efforts on certain areas. Two out of these areas I wanted to mention to you, because one has to do with coordination and cooperation, because we said we can help on that. One example is last year for the first time, this year, sorry, for the first time, we launched a targeted sub-regional strategy for the Caribbean only. We had never done that before, and shame on us, because we should have done that before. But when you look through the strategy, it's full of references on building partnerships, working with CARICOM, working with governments, but also really promoting whole of government approaches and whole of society approaches. Again, even what Bukeni said about the academic world, it's very important that we amplify our understanding. So this you can see in the theory of change. You can see reflected in more and more of our documents, and hopefully our approach. And you tell us, you be the ones to criticize us on that or to hold us accountable on that. And the second element in the theory of change that came out is the work on referral mechanisms, helping governments, because ultimately it's their responsibility, setting up referral mechanisms that work and that are inclusive, and that are inclusive also of the voice of civil society. And very important, with that, I promise I stop, the voice of survivors. If I'm being honest, I've really been so impressed also by the forums held by Free the Slaves, because you've consistently been doing such a good job on really putting the spotlight on survivors in a good way and putting them at the center of discussions. This is something that we are missing in too many initiatives. And I think I'm really looking forward from this coalition to see more and to get inspiration. We've worked with Free the Slaves a lot in other coalitions, also, for example, the Alliance 8.7, where Free the Slaves has shown really how civil society needs to be a voice in all of these global processes around the SDGs. So count on us, and that's my last sentence, count on us to leverage anything you do. And if we can support anything, I think we'd be very happy to do with our traditional partners, such as, of course, UNODC and others. So thank you so much again for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Tim. Very encouraging to hear. And we welcome this continued journey. You and Zeke really lit a fire under us with the talk of having a regional prevention action plan at the forum last year. And you'll be pleased to hear that's one of our main projects for the coalition to bring to fruition. And of course, we can't do it alone. We certainly would need all of our partners along with us. So thank you. At this point, it's my pleasure to introduce Lizette Reyes, Caribbean Project Officer of the UNODC. She stood with us neck and neck as we planned the 2023 forum, was unable to attend, but she was there with us for the 2024 forum planning, as well as executing it. So Lizette, pleasure to have you. Over to you.
Thank you, Adrian. Good morning. First of all, thank you for the invitation and providing this space and this platform for us to come together. I gotta say, following Tim and Bukeni's remarks, it's a little hard. You guys truthfully have set the stage and the tone to be very complex to be able to sort of complete or add to some of the great stuff that you brought up. But I think on behalf of UNODC first, I want to congratulate the space. I feel it very dearly to my heart, having been in the planning of the previous forum and, having been in Jamaica recently, where we heard from survivors, we heard from organizations, we heard from government officials, the crucial need of having a dedicated space for the Caribbean to discuss trafficking in persons. More so, as I work in the Caribbean, in the region, I think it's key to have a space that everyone, because we talk about the region, but I always sort of showcase and put out there that, the Caribbean has very specific characteristics that we need to be aware of, and our interventions need to be very specific to the needs of the countries in the Caribbean. One of my favorite things of working in the region too is that what works in Jamaica may not necessarily work in Trinidad, and having that understanding continues to be crucial in the different interventions that we do. Tim was bringing up, a topic that is pretty important to me in all of the interventions that UNODC is trying to engage with in the region. It's precisely the identification and screening of trafficking. Our latest report, our latest global trafficking persons report, brought up that Central America and the Caribbean had a 36% reduction in the amount of victims that, was identified in the reporting period. And usually if you hear that, you'd say, oh my God, the crime got reduced, we had less trafficking victims, but rather the reality is that since most of the efforts of law enforcement for a long time were focused on COVID, then recovering from COVID, there were so many victims that were left, unidentified, so many people that require, our help, and, spaces and platforms like this one are going to be key to drive that. One of the key learning experiences and results out of joining spaces and the collaboration with Free the Slaves as well, having been at the latest forum, I heard, and I was out there on, we need a space, we need to work together. And as UNODC, I work really hard so we can host the Trafficking in Persons Committee Forum. It's a regional event for government officials specifically to discuss the topic of trafficking specifically for the Caribbean. And that was a direct response to the request of stakeholders that joined the Caribbean Forum this last, I think it was April in Jamaica. One of the other reasons why launching this coalition is very timely, you know, today is July 31st. We just went through World Day Trafficking in Persons. And the theme of this year, as you all know, is Leave No Child Behind, but we all work together to make sure we leave no one behind. And I think also efforts like this are key to make sure we leave no one behind. I was at an event last Friday and I said, you know, we tend to think that this is only a law enforcement thing, a prosecutor effort, or, you know, a survivors initiative. Rather, I said, this is the whole of society effort that we need to have, an approach where we teach and we make everyone aware of the risk of human trafficking, but more importantly, its effects. That having that closeness to working with survivors, with leaders like Sandra, with leaders like Shamir, who joined at the Jamaica Forum, allowed me to learn this phrase that said, one victim is too many victims. And we need to continue to work to make sure we identify, but more than anything, that we prevent and that we protect our children, our women, and everyone in our communities. I think, you know, on behalf of UNODC and within our role of, you know, providing technical assistance and working with stakeholders to combat trafficking, I think we're very excited and very eager to the work that the coalition is going to bring for our region. So thank you again. Thank you, Adrian, Frida Slaves, and all of the partners for the work that you do. And I can't wait to see what the future holds. Thank you again.
You're welcome, Lizette, and thank you. It's really been a pleasure working alongside you on behalf of UNODC, and there's a lot more work to be done. So we're gonna roll up our sleeves and keep getting at it. At this time, we'd like to invite Miguel Trim. He is the Trafficking Persons Analyst for the CARICOM 2.0 project of the UNDP. Miguel, thanks so much for joining us. Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Adrian and colleagues. With all protocol observed, good morning to all gathered here virtually on the heels of yesterday's observance of the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. And also thank you again so much for the invitation to today's proceedings, and congratulations on bringing this coalition to fruition. It's a profound honor to address you today on behalf of the United Nations Development Programme on this occasion of the launch of the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons. We gather here today united by a shared commitment to combat the scourge of human trafficking, a heinous crime that undermines human rights, impedes sustainable development, and erodes the very fabric of our societies. This occasion marks a significant milestone in our collective mission to eradicate human trafficking and support survivors throughout the Caribbean. Human trafficking is a complex and multifaceted issue that requires a concerted and coordinated response. I think this has been elaborated by many of the presentations here so far this morning. It's a violation of most basic human rights, affecting millions of people worldwide, with devastating consequences for individuals, families, and communities. In the Caribbean, the challenges posed by human trafficking are particularly acute, given the region's unique geographic, economic, and social dynamics. The UNDP is proud to support the Caribbean Coalition Against Human Trafficking, a critical initiative that brings together governments, civil society, regional and international organizations, and other stakeholders to forge a united front against this grave violation of human dignity. Through collaboration, we can enhance our collective capacity to prevent trafficking, protect victims, prosecute offenders, and promote partnerships that drive sustainable change. A cornerstone of our efforts in this regard is the CARICOM 2.0 project. This initiative, funded by the United States Agency for International Development and implemented by UNDP, aims to strengthen the capacity of Caribbean countries to collect, analyze, and use crime data effectively. By improving data-driven decision-making, CARICOM 2.0 enhances the ability of governments to address human trafficking and other security challenges more effectively. Accurate and reliable data is essential for understanding the scope of trafficking, identifying trends, and developing targeted interventions that can save lives and restore hope. Our commitment to combating human trafficking is also deeply aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly SDG 16, which calls for peace, justice, and strong institutions, and Target 16.2, which specifically calls for ending abuse, exploitation, trafficking, and all forms of violence and torture against children. Human trafficking is a direct affront to these goals, and our efforts to eradicate human trafficking are integral to achieving a more just, inclusive, and resilient world. By addressing the root causes of trafficking, such as poverty, inequality, and lack of opportunities, we contribute to broader development objectives that benefit all members of society. In this fight, prevention is paramount. We must focus on raising awareness, strengthening legal frameworks, and enhancing the capacities of law enforcement and judicial systems to respond to trafficking effectively. Equally important is the protection and empowerment of victims, as we've highlighted today. Survivors of trafficking need comprehensive support services, including legal assistance, healthcare, psychological support, and opportunities for education and employment to rebuild their lives with dignity and hope. We also recognize the indispensable role of partnerships. The Freedom from Slavery Caribbean Regional Forums in 2023 and 2024 underscored the need for greater collaboration. These forums brought stakeholders together, emphasizing that we are stronger when we work as one. No single entity can tackle human trafficking alone. We must work together, governments, international organizations, civil society, the private sector, and communities, to create a robust and coordinated response. The Caribbean Coalition Against Human Trafficking exemplifies the power of partnerships in action, and we are committed to supporting this coalition in every possible way. Let me share a few words from survivors who remind us why this coalition and collaboration is so crucial. One survivor noted, "When countries work together, it feels like the whole world is fighting for you, not just a single organization." Another said, "Collaboration between nations gives us hope that no one will be left behind, and every trafficker will be brought to justice." Through our collaboration with Free the Slaves, who will serve as the Secretariat for the coalition, we aim to further strengthen our efforts. The expertise in creating a survivor-informed movement has been invaluable. Strengthening collaboration with key partners in the region, such as IOM, UNODC, and CARICOM IMPACS, is also critical, and through projects such as CARISecure 2.0, we are actively working towards making these connections. Together, we aim not only address the immediate needs of survivors, but also build systems that prevent trafficking from occurring in the first place. In closing, let us reaffirm our collective resolve to eradicate human trafficking in the Caribbean and beyond. Let us continue to champion the rights and dignity of every individual, and let us work tirelessly to create a world where no one is exploited or enslaved. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can build a future that is safe, just, and prosperous for all. Thank you for your commitment to this cause and to your continued efforts to achieve the vision of a Caribbean free from human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miguel. Really appreciate you. At this point, we move into our feature address. Mr. Will Harris, Assistant Director of Strategic Services for CARICOM IMPACS. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Master of Ceremonies, and I too want to propose that we adopt all protocols so eloquently established by your good self. And I'd like to inform my distinguished panel members that Adrian was part of a powerful coalition that got me nominated to attend this conference, this opening this morning. And to rub salt in the wounds, he was part of another powerful coalition to get me anointed to bring the feature address. But when I heard the remarks of Bukeni and Lisette and Tim and Miguel, I started tearing up my remarks. So I just thought I'd issue that disclaimer. But first of all, let me apologize on behalf of my Executive Director, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Jones, who would have wanted to be with us here this morning. But unfortunately, he is in Grenada at the Conference of Heads meeting. So he extends his apologies. But it is indeed an honor and a privilege to be with you here this morning at the launch of the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons. But be not dismayed. They say when the senior cannot attend, he sends his most competent junior. I hope his faith in me is not misplaced this morning. But this coalition was born from pivotal discussions at the 2023-2024 Freedom from Slavery Caribbean Regional Forums in Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica, facilitating invaluable dialogue and collaboration among diverse stakeholders, culminating in this coalition's formation. Over the past years, we at CARICOM IMPACS have also spearheaded several initiatives to strengthen our regional capacities to combat human trafficking, notably developing and deploying robust tools such as the Advanced Passenger Information System, the Cybersecurity Fusion Desk. These, combined with other capacity building programs, have significantly enhanced our border security and investigative capabilities. These tools and the strategic guidelines delineated in the 2023 guidance document have equipped our member states with robust mechanisms to detect, deter, and dismantle trafficking networks. At CARICOM IMPACS, we recognize that combating human trafficking transcends national borders and demands a coordinated cross-sectoral approach. From researching the work of the Free the Slaves organization, the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons will embody this principle and serve to represent our collective resolve to eradicate human trafficking through enhanced coordination, resource sharing, and strategic partnerships across government, civil society, and international domains. So today, I wish to underscore 4 guiding pillars that could direct the coalition's endeavors. First being collaboration and partnership. As was echoed previously by speakers, no single entity can defeat human trafficking alone. This coalition can cultivate collaboration among stakeholders, ensuring a coordinated and comprehensive approach. For CARICOM IMPACS, collaboration and partnership initiatives with Interpol, UNODC, and IOM have been instrumental, with targeted initiatives like Operations OCASI and Operational Turquesa showcasing our efforts. Second, the prevention and awareness as a first line of defense. By informing communities about trafficking dangers and tactics, you can empower individuals to resist exploitation and create environments hostile to traffickers. Thirdly, the protection and support for victims are central to these efforts. Victims are the heart of the region's mission. The coalition must prioritize protection and support, ensuring victims receive the care, assistance, and opportunities needed to rebuild their lives. Enhancing victim protection frameworks and promoting a victim-centered approach is paramount. Fourth, technology plays a critical role in combating human trafficking. While technology facilitates traffickers' operations, it is also a powerful tool in our fight. Mobile phones, social media, and AI enable us to raise awareness, identify victims, and analyze trafficking patterns. The CARICOM Cyber Fusion Unit exemplifies this, leveraging cybersecurity measures to disrupt trafficking operations. With those 4 guiding pillars to guide the work ahead, the coalition must also remember that understanding the nuances and complexities across the region is critical in developing effective strategies. Cross-border collaboration is particularly vital in the Caribbean, where our nations are interconnected by geography, culture, and commerce. Traffickers exploit these connections to move victims across borders, making it imperative that we have robust mechanisms for cooperation and information sharing. Furthermore, cross-sector collaboration ensures that our efforts are holistic and sustainable. Law enforcement alone cannot combat trafficking. We must also address the root causes such as poverty, inequality, and lack of education. By engaging with the private sector, we can create economic opportunities that reduce the vulnerability of at-risk populations. Civil society organizations play a crucial role in raising awareness, providing support services to survivors, and advocating for policy changes. By bringing all these sectors together, we can create a formidable force against human trafficking. As we launch this coalition, I wish to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of all those who have contributed to this initiative. Your commitment and passion are the driving forces behind this coalition, and I'm confident that together we will make a profound difference in the lives of so many. So as we progress, let us remain united in our mission, guided by the principles of justice, dignity, and human rights. I wish to conclude by urging all stakeholders to remain steadfast in your commitment to this cause. Let us work together to build a Caribbean region free from the shackles of human trafficking, and where every individual can live in freedom and dignity. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. And I must say, Lieutenant Colonel made an excellent choice when he selected you. Thank you so kindly.
You're too kind.
Well, at this time, I know a lot of people may desire some more information about the coalition, what it's about, what our objectives are, as Bukini had shared. So at this time, I'd just like to share with you. Okay. Brian, can you confirm visibility of my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So as you see, our motto is One Caribbean, One Fight. And this was arrived at through our discussions with the respective stakeholders. These are wonderful, wonderful people from across the region who gathered together for the last 2 years to plan the 2023 Freedom from Slavery Caribbean Regional Forum and its 2024 installment in Jamaica in May. So in all of our discussions and meetings since then, we were able to arrive at this motto: One Caribbean, One Fight. No more silos, no more division. So the organization really is a partnership, cross-border, cross-sector of country agencies, non-profits, law enforcement, civic groups, of course, academia and researchers, because we want to make sure that everything we do is evidence-based, community members, and most importantly, survivors. Our real purpose is to unify, coordinate, encourage, and promote, and really carry on and conduct activities that will eliminate the buying, selling, and exploitation of people in the region, but not at the expense of survivors. They must be empowered, they must be integrated meaningfully, and they must take their role as leaders in this regional movement. Our vision is simple: a Caribbean free from trafficking in persons with empowered and integrated survivors. In that regard, we want to support and enhance existing anti-trafficking efforts because we do recognize that there's so much that has been taking place in the region, from the organizations represented by our opening remarks speakers, as well as so many others who are here on the call, NGOs, CBOs, a lot of government agencies. We want to ensure that we can enhance that work that you're doing and serve as an incubator to identify and align resources so that we're not duplicating effort, but also to share information and network as a hub so that we can mitigate the ongoing effects of trafficking in the region, while at the same time promoting the recognition that all forms of trafficking are an abuse of universal human rights. When I say all forms, really referring to things that sometimes we minimize. At the forum in Jamaica, for example, the theme focused on culture and how does our culture not only facilitate exploitation and trafficking, but also hinder us from addressing it, because sometimes through the lens of culture, we have labeled certain things other than an abuse of someone else's human rights. So our objectives mirror some of what you would have heard earlier. Want to mobilize our collective strength to build a transformative approach to trafficking, not the same old, to build an anti-trafficking movement where survivors have access to services that enable them to thrive. We want to commit to the dismantling of harmful systems that create the vulnerabilities. Just as Mr. Harris said, we can't simply say we're tackling trafficking without addressing the conditions that allow it to thrive. In addition, we want to map and collate those stakeholders and actors who are already doing meaningful work in the region, and organize and establish resource centers so that organizations, individuals can actually access information on those issues. Beyond that, we want to aid and promote the elimination of all forms of trafficking through widespread education and publication, and improve the protection, return, and reintegration of victims of trafficking, and promote survivor leadership. Through this, we will be utilizing some very core values of empathy, empowerment, inclusion, integrity, and meaningful collaboration. Our coalition structure is simple. Our interim leadership committee comprises those persons who served on the planning committee for the 2023 and 2024 forums. Beneath them, we will have a secretariat, which previously has agreed to fulfill that coordinating role, and 5 standing committees. We've heard of SMART in terms of identifying goals. We have a SMART series of committees: survivors, membership, advocacy, research, and training. We also have a structure for conveners. This will allow organizations that are identified as having some interesting and innovative content to contribute to provide training on a 6-month rotation for members of the coalition. What this can actually provide is a structure where there's a lot of growth and sharing of resources and best practices across the region. So our leadership committee providing strategic guidance and leadership, the conveners serving 6-month terms, and the secretariat providing a coordinating role. To be eligible to be a member of the coalition, it's quite simple. Verified stakeholders who are actually doing the work in the region, state and non-state actors. We welcome survivors in particular, as well as business, labor, academia, regional networks, and donors. But it's not just a matter of submitting an application and you're automatically granted access, simply because we understand that some very sensitive information is going to be available to persons, and therefore vetting must be conducted. That process looks like this. So upon completion of a form, the coalition members will conduct, leadership will conduct an initial review and request further information or documents to substantiate what is included in the application. After further review and vetting, a decision will be made. If that is favorable, then there's an onboarding process for the member organization. It will entail an introduction to the other members, inclusion in the directory of membership, and engaging in the activities of the coalition. Our leadership committee comprises, as I mentioned, persons from across the region. So some of them are pictured here. Dr. Cherise Francis, she's a native of Barbados, an attorney, an educator, and researcher. Her PhD studies at University of Warwick in the UK examine the culture, history, discourse, and law surrounding anti-trafficking in the Anglophone Caribbean. She's also been involved in numerous consultancies, trainings, and workshops as a facilitator and scholar. Neil Backett of Guyana, he is the CEO of the Indigenous Peoples Commission, which promotes and protects the rights of Indigenous peoples in that country. Among other roles, he serves on the National Task Force on Trafficking in Persons and the Interreligious Organization. The IPC actually is the first convener of the coalition from July to December. Diane Gordon Harrison of Jamaica, she is a former prosecutor and has been the children's advocate of Jamaica since January 2012, and Jamaica's National Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons since March of 2015. She's the first to hold such a post in the Latin America and Caribbean region. The Office of the National Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons will be the coalition's second convener from January to June of 2025. Sandra Christie Brown, who you will hear from shortly, she's a native of Jamaica and the founder of Finding Your Light Foundation, Inc., focusing on mental health. She's a businesswoman, and among her many volunteer activities, she serves as the National Executive Board Member at Large and the Chair of the Human Trafficking Committee of the National Council of Negro Women in the USA. Murphylas James, he's an avid disability rights advocate from the island of St. Lucia, and he served as the president of the National Council for Persons with Disabilities in St. Lucia since January 2015. In 2019, he was elected president of Disabled Peoples International North America and the Caribbean, Inc. We also have Dr. Jason Haynes on our leadership committee, a native of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and a renowned scholar, facilitator, and consultant on human trafficking. Dr. Haynes wrote a seminal book on human trafficking that examined the laws of the various Caribbean territories. His work with international agencies, CARICOM, regional courts, and governments has influenced improvements in legislation, policies, and procedures for judicial and law enforcement officers. Next, we have Renee Batiste, CNG. She is the incoming president of Rockham's International Caribbean Network and a distinguished legal and political figure from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. A passionate advocate for women's empowerment and youth development, she serves as the esteemed speaker of the OECS Parliamentary Assembly, embodying her commitment to regional cooperation and governance. Next, we have Charmaine Gandhi Andrews, who has served in the Trinidad and Tobago Public Service for 38 years, 32 of which were spent as an immigration officer. She became the nation's first female chief immigration officer in 2015, before which she was the first director of the counter-trafficking unit, for which she received recognition as a trafficking and business hero by the U.S. Department of State in 2014. Andrina Briceño Ventura Brown, a native of Venezuela, now resident in Trinidad and Tobago, has a background in journalism, but has since dedicated herself to the identification, protection, and response for victims of trafficking. Through her NGO, La Casita Hispanic Cultural Center, she leads a holistic team dedicated to supporting female victims of gender-based violence. We have Smith Maxime, a native of Haiti with a background in law, journalism, and communications. He has devoted his time to organizational capacity building, promotion of the rights of vulnerable people, gender equality, and project management. He's the Caribbean Regional Director for Free the Slaves and the former Haiti Country Director. And we all know of some of the challenges that have been faced by Haiti in recent years. And a lot of the work of Free the Slaves and other organizations in combating the rest of the system there, actually, we don't want that to be lost. So therefore, Smith's function here on the leadership committee will also include being that liaison and ensuring that some of the learning from a community standpoint in prevention, in societal transformation, and also in survivor empowerment can be brought to the coalition. As I mentioned, the conveners, firstly, Guyana, with the Indigenous Peoples Commission for the remainder of this year, and then Jamaica for the first half of next year. This actually allows for the organizations, in this case, these two are either state agencies or agencies aligned to their respective governments, serving on their national task forces. This allows them in collaboration with a government agency, therefore, to provide this type of training and capacity building for members of the coalition from across the region, thereby really reinforcing the aspect of being able to share knowledge and improve everyone's response to trafficking in persons. So we thank them for volunteering to serve in those roles. The Secretariat, as Free the Slaves, we were founded in 2000 and today considered a leader and pioneer in the modern abolitionist movement. A lot of our work focuses on influencing policymakers and advocating for change, engaging local communities through our Community Liberation Initiative toolkit and other resources, continuous learning through research, and we have a wonderful research officer in the form of Dr. Marta Fulan, and movement building, which is where a lot of people come to know of the work of Free the Slaves through our firstly global and now regional Freedom from Slavery forums. Our SMART committees. I mentioned to you earlier that we have 5 standing committees. One will look at improving the identification, protection, empowerment, strengthening and enhancing of survivors of trafficking, and really promoting them as leaders of the regional movement. Another will focus on membership issues and really maintaining engagement with members of the coalition, doing some of the work of vetting potential members, and really building that membership directory for the coalition. Advocacy is an integral role, and that will focus on advocacy with state, business, legislative, judicial, and other entities to promote evidence-based best practices in our region. We can't do that without research. So that means that we also have to look at an analysis, maybe a gap analysis of counter-trafficking policies and laws and procedures and programs in various countries around the region, and really to identify and address those research gaps in our region while conducting continuous monitoring, evaluation, and learning on all of the activities of the coalition. And nothing really gets done without training and capacity building. So this committee will focus on identifying what are the training needs, not only of coalition members, but also of key stakeholders in the region, and conducting, together with the conveners, training and capacity building activities to address those needs in a holistic manner. When you look at our objectives, you realize that there are several projects that we should be undertaking. I mentioned earlier in response to Mr. Tim Howe's remarks that you and Zeke Bihari of IOM, together with Charmaine Gandhi Andrews at last year's forum, really reinforced the need for a prevention action plan that will be regional in scope. So this will be one of our first projects. Another is a regional resource hub that was touted by Diane Gordon Harrison and the Honortip of Jamaica, an expansion of their regional resource directory that they have actually put online for the last few years. But it needs, of course, to be improved and enhanced and expanded with data, with regional activities and resources from other jurisdictions. We're also looking at a regional stakeholder mapping so that we identify who is doing what in the region and how, therefore, we can have more effective partnerships and not be duplicating efforts unnecessarily. One matter that was raised in our discussions was also a regional speakers bureau to ensure that there are structures in place for our survivors when they go out and they're invited to speak, so that they're not exploited, they're not underpaid, they're not taken advantage of in any way. So building capacity in individuals and also a speakers bureau will enhance the work in the region of the coalition. And of course, we mentioned the regional freedom from slavery forums, but also other counter-trafficking conferences and meetings online or in person are also part of the project line for the coalition. So for further information, please contact us. Those of you who are more techy than others, you can scan the QR code. Otherwise, you can simply send an email to this address. And we're putting the finishing touches on our website. So hopefully within the next month or so, we'll be able to launch that, and it will have some resources that you will be able to access, as well as more information about some of the activities and the committees that I shared already. So thank you so very kindly. So what we'll do now is invite Ms. Sandra Christie Brown to deliver remarks on behalf of the Leadership Committee. Sandra, over to you.
Thank you, Adrian. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, and honored guests, good morning. Today, we, the Leadership Committee, stands united in our commitment to combat human trafficking across our region. While empowering survivors, it is both an honor and a privilege that we share with you as we launch the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in person. This initiative represents not just a commitment to action, but also a beacon of hope for countless individuals who have suffered in silence. Our coalition is dedicated to raising awareness, fostering collaboration, promoting survivors' engagement, and implementing effective strategies to eradicate human trafficking in person. Human trafficking is a crime that transcends borders, affecting millions globally. It is an effort to human dignity and rights, exploiting the most vulnerable among us, children, women, men, and marginalizing communities. The statistics are staggering. It is estimated that over 25 million people are currently victims of human trafficking worldwide. These numbers are not just figures. They represent lives shattered by exploitation and abuse. As we embark on this journey together, let us remember that our mission goes beyond mere statistics. Each number reflects a person, a mother separated from a child, a young girl coerced into servitude, or a laborer trapped in conditions akin to slavery. Our work here today is about restoring hope and freedom to those who have been denied their basic human rights. We understand that combating human trafficking requires a collaborative effort. Therefore, we are actively engaging with various stakeholders, including non-governmental organizations, NGOs, law enforcement agencies, and community leaders. By fostering partnerships across sectors, we aim to create a robust network that can effectively address the complexity of the crime. In closing, the Human Trafficking Coalition Against Trafficking in Person, the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Person, reaffirms its dedication to eradicating this grave violation of human rights. We call upon all sectors of society, government, civil society, private sectors actors, and individuals to join us in this vital fight. Together, we can build a safer future for all. Thank you. And I'm going to share this poem with you this morning in light of Human Trafficking Day, which was memorized yesterday. We look back on Trafficking in Person Day yesterday, and today, just a day after, I'm going to share with you with this poem, In Bloom, by Kelly Wells. A life interrupted, like a hourless in motion, like a hourless glass in motion, suddenly stopped by all commotion, looking, seeking, wanting help, but lips sealed shut by the mere thought of survival and fear. Who will I tell? Who will believe me if I tell them my side of the story? Trapped is what I feel inside our thoughts, as if it were unreal, while deep inside screaming and yelling, someone please help me, someone please help me. And all the while dying inside, mute is what I feel. While living in an asylum of shame, did I do this? Is this all my fault? Maybe I should just suck it up and move on. Stay silent. Don't say a word. No one will believe you, were the words I often heard. From 5 to 15, the pain remains the same. Man after man, just a different name. The daily remembrance from the childhood that was stolen and snatched away. Innocence lost and replaced with shame. Ever burn, ever scar, every mark left behind is a reminder of the pain. Today, today is a different day. God says, I am not to blame. Those scars, those burns, those marks left behind will be very motivation to draw the line. Enough is enough. No more lost childhood. Help, fight, listen is my prayer. End human trafficking and let us know you care. Shattered, I no longer see. I am beautiful, as beautiful can be. My life is no longer determined by the painful memory. I am shameless. I am blameless for all to see. Life is no longer determined by what you did to me. Now I smile with joyful heart because I'm at peace with who God made me. Perfect, blameless, and shameless is what he sees, and he has set me free. Free from bondage, free from fear, free from survival, and free to love me. Thankful is what I am now, that I live in peace and joy and being restored. Love is what I feel now, and has wiped away the pain. I fight for change to help make a difference and save 1, 2, or 3. Life matters, as you can see, and I hope you can join me to save another childhood, to bloom, to blossom, and to be free. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Just the comments, powerful poem. My heart is touched beyond words. We share the name of the author of the poem. That's Kelly Wells. Thank you so much, Sandra, for your excellent delivery. It really is touching. Thank you so much. So at this time, we'd like to invite remarks on the part of international networks and coalitions. First up, we have Ms. Ugonna Ukaigwe, Program Manager, Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, which is the Secretariat to the Commonwealth 8.7 network. Ugonna is a dear friend and has been so very supportive of our move to establish the coalition here. And it's a wonderful pleasure and honor, Ugonna, to have you join us this morning. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian, for those kind words. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, distinguished colleagues and partners. My name is Ugonna Ukaigwe. I'm the Program Manager for the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, UK. CHRI is an independent international non-governmental organization working for the practical realization of human rights throughout the Commonwealth since 1987. CHRI has 3 offices in India, United Kingdom, and Ghana. In July 2019, CHRI UK office established the Commonwealth 8.7 network as an initiative to commemorate the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons and has served as its secretariat till date. The Commonwealth 8.7 network is a global member-driven network made up of over 100 local non-governmental organizations who share a common vision to tackle modern slavery and human trafficking. A few months back, when Free the Slaves reached out to CHRI for guidance on establishing a coalition of anti-trafficking civil society organizations in the Caribbean, we were really delighted to offer our support, given our experience with coordinating the global 8.7 network. It is indeed exciting to see that this vision has now become a reality. So on behalf of CHRI, I would like to extend an invitation to the coalition to become a member of the Commonwealth 8.7 network. It is my hope that our request will be duly considered. Now, let me say that it is indeed with great pleasure that I present my remarks today for the launch of the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons. This moment marks a significant milestone in our collective fight against one of the most grievous violations of human rights, trafficking in persons. In our modern world, where the complexities of trafficking networks are ever evolving, the role of coalitions and networks has never been more crucial. Coalitions, as we all know, amplify the voice of civil society, making it impossible for policymakers and other stakeholders to ignore our demands. By working together as a collective, coalitions present a united front, pushing for policy changes and societal reforms more effectively than any individual organization could. Today, we stand united to reinforce the power of collaboration and solidarity in our efforts to combat human trafficking. The Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons represents not just a network of organizations, but a beacon of hope and strength for survivors, a support system for stakeholders, and a lifeline for underserved populations. I want to greatly commend Free the Slaves and all the state and non-state actors in the Caribbean for this initiative. It is my hope that the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons will be a dynamic force in the Caribbean region and that it will receive the full support of the Caribbean community, CARICOM. Together, we can make a profound difference in the fight against human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ugonna. Always wonderful to have CHRI on board, and you're doing tremendous work at the level of the Commonwealth. Most certainly, that invitation will be given due consideration. Thank you so much. At this point, we have recorded remarks from Ms. Dalaina May, founder and executive director of Dark Bali. Dark Bali is the current Secretariat to the Global Learning Community. Dalaina, unfortunately, was unable to join us live as she is traveling at this time from the ARAT conference. It's an Asian regional anti-trafficking conference that took place a few days ago. So at this point, I'd ask Brian if he can play that recording for us, please.
Hello from Indonesia. My name is Dalaina May, and I'm the founder and executive director of Dark Bali, Indonesia. We started out about 10 years ago as a tiny little task force of only 4 organizations on one island, and we've grown quite a bit. We are now nearly at 100 organizations across the whole country. As you can imagine, it's been a pretty wild ride, and I am super excited for you, and I want to congratulate you for getting to this milestone, this launch of your own regional coalition. It's a very big deal. The importance of coordinating anti-trafficking efforts between organizations and across sectors can't really be understated. The efficacy of coalitions and task forces, alliances is acknowledged pretty widely, and we know that the cost, both economic and societal, for the lack of coordination is pretty big. Though our movement has matured in the last 25 years, the anti-trafficking movement as a whole is still pretty reactive rather than proactive. Many stakeholders and NGOs have moved on from the reactive model and within themselves are developing new proactive and coordinated approaches, but still we're seeing a lot of inconsistency and a lack of coordination between stakeholders working together. And sometimes the partnerships, while they're happening, they're not necessarily strategic, they're not necessarily informed, but they're still pretty disjointed and often, again, reactive, which leads to the replication of services and also gaps really in our work. The current modern day slavery and anti-trafficking movement really has to be restructured, and it's being restructured. If you look around, we are seeing changes and shifts toward these collectives and coalitions. We recognize that there's a need for interorganizational and even multi-sectoral collaboration, really at every level. We have to be local, we have to be national, we have to be regional, and we actually really have to be global to combat this global crime. Coalitions have been proven to be the most effective way to create collective impact and systemic change that is proactive and efficient and effective. According to research, there are 5 essential elements to make a collective impact: a common agenda, shared measurements, mutually reinforcing activities, continuous communication, and a strong backbone support organization. It's not enough to just share goals and dreams. It's not enough to just share intentions. The goals really have to be organized around activities that meet the agreed upon agenda, that have targeted milestones. There has to be some sort of facilitating organization or individuals that are supporting the achievement of these community goals. In fact, experts of coalitions say that the expectation that collaboration can occur without supporting infrastructure is one of the frequent reasons why it fails. The newest research on coalitions notes that the structure of each coalition must be developed by members of the community itself and takes into account the cultural realities of that context. I've been very privileged to be kind of watching from behind the scenes as your coalition is developing. And it's really exciting to me because as I've listened and watched, I'm seeing that you have these 5 elements already at hand. And I'm so excited to see how you're going to take this forward. My encouragement to you as you get started is to care for one another well. As you build trust with one another, you'll find that so much of this comes very, very naturally and so much easier. I promise it will not be simple. I promise that it will not be straightforward, and I promise it will get messy sometimes. But when you have a backbone of trust and you have a community behind you and you really care for one another well, all of these things tend to sort themselves out a lot more easily. So do the work, but also care for one another in the process. And honestly, my experience in the Caribbean makes me pretty certain that you're going to be able to do that pretty easily as well. So again, congratulations on reaching this huge milestone. And I am super excited to hear what happens in the future. And I'm really excited to even get to work with you as another global coalition somehow in the future. So congratulations and enjoy the launch.
That's Dalaina May. She joined us at the regional forum in Jamaica in May, play on her name, but really a very strong supporter of the work that we're doing here in the region. Next up, we have Mr. Fernando Garcia Robles, anti-trafficking in persons and human rights specialist, Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. They recently launched the IACHR Dialogue Network to combat trafficking in persons in the Americas. Over to you, Fernando.
Yes, good morning, Adrian, and good morning, colleagues. Can you hear me well? Can you see me? Yes, correct. Thank you. Well, thank you to Freed Slaves and congratulations to Freed Slaves. We have acknowledged during this meeting and somehow commemorated the World Day Against Human Trafficking. I cannot say we have celebrated the World Day Against Human Trafficking because there's nothing to celebrate when it comes to human trafficking. However, and yesterday I would like to recall that and present to you that yesterday the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, and I'm speaking at the personal level here, issue a press release acknowledging this Global Day. And it was a press release that was joined by the Special Rapporteur on the United Nations human trafficking. And I'm addressing this issue in this special press release because in the section on challenges, one of the issues that we addressed, that we pointed out in our first meeting of the Commission's network against human trafficking, is that we brought civil society together to learn what are the challenges, what's happening in the hemisphere, in the Western Hemisphere when it comes to human trafficking. So this press release, it's a way of telling our region what are those challenges, what's happening, what's not happening when it comes to human trafficking. And that brings me to my point on how important it is to form networks, to form coalitions. It's a way to bring together not only civil society, but other sectors, academia, faith organizations, the public sector, in order to maybe some organizations are better with dealing with prevention, some others with the prosecution of criminals, some other organizations with protection and reparation of victims. But it takes basically a whole body of institutions, of actors, organizations in order to address this issue and to fight against human trafficking. So this effort that the Caribbean Coalition is launching today, I applaud. It's a great instrument that could be used. And to finish, I would like to invite you, for those who might be interested, to join also the Inter-American Commission Network Against Human Trafficking, because the Commission within the Inter-American system has some mechanisms that could be of use to you and to your victims, to your constituents, to know whether you might want to press an issue within your area with a thematic hearing within the Commission, or present precautionary measures against some, in benefit of someone whose rights might be violated, or present a case before the Commission. So this network that we are establishing today within this coalition is only going to strengthen our fight as a collective against human trafficking. So Once again, thank you very much for the invitation. With the Commission, we are at your disposal. We are here to be part of your commitment to continue fighting human trafficking. Thank you very much, and thank you, and congratulations to Free the Slaves, and particularly the Caribbean chapter of Free the Slaves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fernando. Well, at this time, we are about to get into our questions and feedback. I know a couple of questions may have already been posed in the chat. But before we do that, I'd like to ask Brian, our communications manager, to just orchestrate a photo of the participants so that we can commemorate the launch, please. If you would kindly turn on your cameras for that purpose. Brian, if you'd guide us through the process, I'd be most grateful.
Of course. Thank you. So, panelists, if you could briefly turn on your cameras, that would be fantastic. We'll take a quick screenshot here, and then we'll get on with the Q&A. Okay. Looks like we're just missing Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris, are you available? Okay, it looks like Mr. Harris is not available. So we will take the photo as we have it. All right, everyone. 1, 2, and 3. Done. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Okay, so at this point, Brian shared with me a question that was asked by Om Prakash Kulari. Which elements and people who forced or imposed the situation to continue the practices of human trafficking, and why is not the law or regulatory machine of the member countries of the UN not able to end this kind of inhuman activities and human trafficking? Very broad question. I don't know if anyone would like to tackle that. Fernando?
I could not hear very well. The internet interrupted. Could you repeat the question?
Certainly. The question is, which elements and people who forced or imposed the situation to continue the practices of human trafficking, and why is not the law or regulatory machinery of the member countries of the UN not able to end this kind of inhuman activity or human trafficking?
Okay, certainly. Yes, universally, there are conventions, there are declarations, there are resolutions, but oftentimes some of these instruments are not binding, meaning that it is up to member states, up to governments to, even after they sign or ratify these international instruments, it's up to member states, to governments to implement these mechanisms and the instruments. And oftentimes that's not necessarily the case. So that's one of the reasons why we see, well, the good thing is that all member states, all independent nations of the Americas, of the Western Hemisphere, including all Caribbean countries, English-speaking, Spanish-speaking, French-speaking Caribbean countries, they all have signed and ratified the Palermo Protocol. But it's up to the governments to make sure that what they have agreed to are implemented. These mechanisms of prevention and prosecution and protection, comprehensively protecting victims, that they're all implementing. So implemented. So it's on one hand, yes, there's the will, but or is an effort to ratify these mechanisms. But on the other hand, it needs more than just a signature. It needs more than just ratifying. It needs more than that. It's necessary that governments bring together civil society, bring together other actors. And that's why a coalition is so important, because coalitions bring together different actors that could, in a way, contribute to combating this crime. Another thing why we see that human trafficking continues to persist is because of corruption. And oftentimes that's not seen as a major issue, but yes, human trafficking still exists because corrupt entities, corrupt officials, in some cases, they turn a blind eye to what's going on. And so there are a number of issues why human trafficking, we still see human trafficking, but that's why a collective effort is necessary. It will not go away with just one actor trying to fight this crime. It needs a collective effort in order to address this issue.
Thank you so much, Fernando. Lizette?
Thank you, Adrian, and thank you, Fernando, for that answer. I think I would also like to bring in some insights on the UNODC side. One of those things that I always engage with member states and counterparts and stakeholders is just like Fernando said, ratifying the protocol in itself, is not enough. It takes very specific actions and interventions to combat human trafficking. And precisely, spaces like this, are very important, but also, it's not only having legislation, but that the legislation is up to the standard of the protocol, but also the nature of the crime. A lot of what we're seeing too is like the human trafficking is very evolving phenomenon that, one day we're here and then 2 days later, traffickers are 2 steps ahead. So that's why, ratifying the protocol is important. Having legislation up to standard is important, but having active, society members, organizations, and, member states and institutions are also key to be able to combat trafficking, because one of the interesting things of working this topic, it is a demand-driven crime. The demand doesn't stop easily. There's such a high demand, unfortunately, for example, for it sounds terrible, but for sexual exploitation. And it is up to us to continue to bring awareness and taking specific actions at the national level to combat trafficking, because that, the response to that question is like not one person or institution can do it by themselves. At UNODC, we work with member states, but we've been trying to broaden the efforts to working with survivors in advocacy and understanding, what else is needed in the interventions to make sure that we're tackling everything that we need to. But the underlying message is, ratifying it in itself is not enough. Legislation alone is not enough. It requires a whole of government and a whole of society approach to combat trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lizette. Many other of our panelists want to weigh in on this. Ugonna, from a Commonwealth perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. And just thinking through some of the challenges when it comes to coordinating coalition, and I like the point by the previous speaker when she said we need to build trust, try and work together with each other, and most importantly, I think that I heard your presentation when you were talking about how the coalition is structured and the support that will be given to, you have a particular platform where survivors, when they are invited for events, are able to be supported and making sure that they are underpaid. And that's really very interesting, because one of the things we've talked about as a network also is to make sure that we have room for survivors, apart from the fact that they have opportunity to be engaged with the network, but also supporting building their capacity, getting them to become advocates themselves. How do we get them to that level where they're able to advocate for their own cause? And they are also being brought on board to events and meetings because of the experience the expertise they have to offer, not just necessarily sharing their stories. They have an option to decide whether or not they want to share their stories, but we're bringing them on board based on this experience and expertise that they have based on the experience they've had. So what they're going to be sharing during that event is also crucial. So somebody guiding them also to make sure that their expertise is what is being looked at, and not necessarily using them as, because they've suffered some of those challenges. So yeah, I'm really very excited about what this coalition would do, and I know we would have more conversations on the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ugonna. That's an excellent point, especially when you consider I'm not sure what percentage in our region where countries are developing national plans of action, which are survivor informed. In many spaces, the persons in the room don't have lived experience, but they may have law enforcement experience, they may have policy experience, and yet they may be crafting something that is disconnected from what is truly needed by survivors, but even more so, what is not necessarily guaranteed to be truly effective because it lacks that survivor-informed approach. So excellent point. And of course, the issue of resources is one that's often rehearsed in so many different spaces when one compares the billions of dollars thrown against the war on drugs as opposed to this egregious violation of human rights. One wonders the priorities of some of the organizations. So again, it goes back to willpower, as Fernando mentioned. There must be not only the showing of a ratification, a signatory, but also putting resources to back up the same thing that we have committed to eradicate in our jurisdiction and in our region. So thank you so much. I see another question in the chat, and this comes from Garth Sinclair. Garth is asking, our question at this time is related to prevention, and it's how can the coalition amass and in turn, how might we access resources necessary to create awareness-raising media? They are the executive producers of a feature film called Trafficked, which was released in 2015 and has since been receiving rave reviews from persons in audiences. Recently, they visited Jamaica, where it was screened. So this really speaks to the power of media to convey a message, to portray scenarios which people can more quickly grasp than if we're simply telling them something or giving them a case study to read. How can the coalition amass those resources? And that's an excellent question. And it's something that, again, we all have to contribute to in terms of being able to commit and contribute resources for a particular purpose. So one of the things would be advocacy, lobbying, whether it's CARICOM or national governments or businesses, to contribute to endeavors of this nature and other natures. So, for example, when we consider one of our leadership committee members, Wilfilus James, represents the Disabled Peoples International North America and the Caribbean, how can we ensure that resources and awareness raising that we put out there is accessible to all segments of society? So we also have to look at that aspect of it and see, because there are several entities that are international, some are regional, that are actually established to support persons with disabilities or other vulnerable groups, so that we can tailor messages for those particular groupings. So Garth, excellent question. And it's one which I'm sure the leadership committee will take into account as it deliberates and puts together some of these things for the projects, because again, those particular projects also require resources. So the resourcing of all of these activities, including awareness-raising media, will be part of the discussions, I'm sure. Ugonna, would you like to contribute anything?
Yeah, so I was just thinking through the question about raising awareness. I think one of the things you can consider is using creative arts. I was just listening to Sandra's poem and imagining if someone had depicted that poem, creatively, and we watch it being presented, that would have been excellent. And that can be played in the different events that you go to, where we have people who can read poems out and even just do a short drama or even speech, just beginning or at the end of each of the events, so that way we can raise an awareness. So creative art is something we can incorporate in some of our programs, and we can find people with expertise to do that. Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent.
Sandra, that was excellent.
Fernando, is there anything you wanted to contribute?
Yes, sure. This is one of the points of forming a coalition, and I'm just throwing an idea here. A coalition brings together different sectors of society, different actors. inclined to believe, to think that this coalition will establish, strengthen relations with the ministries of education of the Caribbean countries, just to give you an example. So this could be addressing this issue with the right officials. In this particular question, media could play a very important role by strengthening this network with the coalition and presenting this film to the different educational institutions, whether it's a primary school, whether it's secondary school. I think the information would be relevant to for different audiences. So this is just to give you an example on something practical that might not necessarily demand a lot of financial resources. It's just the will of the parties involved to present this awareness raising about what human trafficking is through this film. One example. So that's how I would try to strengthen the participation of the public sector, whether it's the Ministry of Education or other ministries, in order to make sure that the message goes not only to a small number of persons, but a larger audience. Just an example.
Thank you so much for that example, Fernando. We have another question from Nadine Finnegan-Carr. She's a prevention scientist currently serving as ED of the UMB Center for Violence Prevention. She's asking, will there be additional focus on other P's, not just on prosecution? That would, of course, include prevention, protection, especially for youth. Nadine's short answer, definitely that is the case, as you would have seen from the projects that we outlined. The first one is actually a regional prevention action plan. So there's a heavy emphasis on prevention. And also from our survivor committees, you would see that there's a strong emphasis as well on protection. And the coalition itself is the embodiment of a partnership. Thanks so much for that question. So this time we'll have our, Sandra, yes?
Thank you, Adrian, and thank you, everyone, and audience out there. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I heard something just pricked in my spirit when it talked about prevention, and I remember just to give it a little summarization. I think it was 6 years ago, going to a school and doing report cards review, and just look at report cards of some of the young ladies and see the absentees in the classroom, and also looking at their grades, how low the grades were. That gave me a red flag, and just prompt the question and ask the young ladies, do they plan to go to further their education or get a skill? And they all about 3 of them told me they want to be professional strippers, and they want to work at a strip club because they make plenty of money, and they want to be like Diamond in the Players Club. So saying this to say all that, I didn't stop there. After they replied, I went to the school board and alert the school board that these students did not know what human trafficking was in the classroom. So what we did a campaign, and the school board announcement voted that they wanted in Dade County Public School here in Florida, Miami-Dade, the human trafficking be taught in the schools. So we have 67 counties here in Florida. So as NGOs and other groups and survivors, we couldn't take it to each county. So what we did with the support of the school board and the NGOs, we took it to the state capitol. And it was, went through the House, went through the Senate, got to the Appropriation Committee, and it stopped there because of funding. However, the Department of Education decided to take that bill and made it a policy that human trafficking be taught in every schools in Florida from K through 12, making Florida the first school in the USA, in the states, in the USA here. Florida is the only state that has human trafficking education be taught in school. So what it tells me, we have work to do in the region. wherever we are, we have work to do. We have to take time to pay attention to persons when they're speaking to us and when we're having a dialogue, to kindly listen and look for the red flags, know what human trafficking is. I myself, being a survivor, didn't know I was trafficked because we thought human trafficking is just sex trafficking. And the answer is no, it's different types of human trafficking. So I would, make an appeal for persons to, in your community, start bringing awareness of what is human trafficking. And I think that's the fundamental, that's the piece that needs to be brought for the front of the room and approach that elephant in the room, and that, the survivor, take them on their journey to therapy, take them on their journey to be a survivor leader like me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Very excellent and clear example and illustration of how something of this can be done. Again, what we are seeing across the region, some of the countries with fairly high tip report ratings are actually implementing modules, let's say, on human trafficking in their school curricula. So this is something that's certainly not unattainable here in the region, and it goes back to having the willpower to do so. We do have a very crowded curriculum for secondary schools, I know, but it certainly is not impossible to integrate elements of this into some of the existing courses that exist, even things like history or social studies and so many other things. We can integrate certain things, elements into it. So at this time, we are at the point of closing. I know we're just a little over our scheduled finishing time. And one thing that we'd like to do at this point is invite Mr. Neil Backus, the CEO of the Indigenous Peoples Commission of Guyana, the incoming, the current convener rather, for the coalition, to deliver closing remarks. Neil?
Hi, thank you, Adrian. Are you guys hearing me clearly?
Yes, we are. We're not seeing you, but we're hearing you clearly.
I don't know if the camera will affect the
Okay, yes, we are seeing you now. Yes.
But you hear me? You hear me still?
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the close of this momentous launch of the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Person, it is a great pride and a sense of shared purpose that I address you today on behalf of the Indigenous Peoples Commission from Guyana. This coalition, the formation of this coalition marks a significant milestone in our collective efforts to combat the scourge of human trafficking. It is a testament to our unwavering commitment to leave no one behind in the fight against human trafficking. This mantra is not just a slogan, it is a call to action that resonates deeply within the heart of Guyana and the broader Caribbean region. Our journey has been shaped by the resilience and the dedication of many individuals and organizations, each contributing to the mosaic of the efforts required to tackle this complex issue. The launch of this coalition brings together diverse voices and expertise, fostering a unified front against traffickers and providing a beacon of hope for the victim of this heinous crime. In Guyana, we recognize the unique challenges faced by our indigenous and migrant communities, who are often at a higher risk of exploitation. Our commitment to protecting these vulnerable groups is unwavering. We are determined to enhance our strategies, improve our protective measures, and ensure that our policies are inclusive and effective. I would like to highlight the significant efforts made by the Guyana government in combating the trafficking in person. Our government has implemented comprehensive anti-trafficking laws, established specialized anti-trafficking units within law enforcement, and developed victim assistance programs. These initiatives include providing safe shelters, medical care, and psychological support to trafficking victims. Additionally, we have launched public awareness campaigns to educate our citizens about the dangers of human trafficking and to educate and encourage the reporting of suspicious activity. These combined efforts have contributed to our recognition as a Tier 1 country in the U.S. Department of State Trafficking Imports Report for the last 8 years, reflecting our commitment to meeting the high standard of human trafficking. Today's discussion and the formation of this leadership committee are crucial steps in our journey. The insights shared by our esteemed speakers, the collaboration fostered among international networks, and the robust feedback received all serve to strengthen our resolve and refine our approaches. As the first conveyor of this coalition, the Indigenous Peoples Commission is honored to witness the collective will and determination that each of you bring to this cause. Our strength lies in our unity. The partnerships we forge today will pave the way for a future where human trafficking is not just addressed, but eradicated. Each member of this coalition brings invaluable resources and perspectives, and together we form a formidable force against trafficking. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all participants, speakers, and organizers of this launch event. Your dedication and passion are the driving forces behind this initiative. Let us continue to work hand in hand, ensuring that our efforts to translate into tangible results and that every individual, regardless of their background, is afforded the dignity and freedom they deserve. In closing, let us reaffirm our commitment to this noble cause. Let us pledge to protect the vulnerable, prosecute the perpetrators, and provide a safe haven for the survivors. Together, we can make a difference. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Neil. And to all of our panelists and those who have joined us for this launch event, we say a heartfelt thank you. And we look forward to receiving your communication. Billy Bryan entered our coalition email address in the chat. It's secretariat@ccatip.org. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.